Right now, we'd like to share with you a recent presentation that was made to Richmond Municipal Council's Committee of the Whole. It involved two members of the Lake Biosphere Reserve Association. You're going to hear, for the most part, from the chair of the board of directors for the association, Eileen Crosby, but you'll also see that she's accompanied by Gordon Kerr, a St. Peter's resident who is also part of the association. Here's what they had to say during the December meeting of Richmond County's Committee of the Whole.
There's a lot of misunderstanding out there about what the biosphere is, okay? And so I think one of our problems is right there in the title is the word reserve. And of course, reserve, let's box it off and fence it off and whatever. And that's not the case at all. So let's just run through and find out what it's about. Okay, so they're really very beautiful areas. We're very fortunate to live where we do. And they're beautiful areas, and we consider people part of the ecosystem. When we talk ecosystem, everybody thinks about beavers and foxes and fish and everything else. But we're part of an ecosystem as well, okay? And so we're right there. And really what a biosphere is about balance. Balance between the needs of the environment and the needs of the people living in that environment, okay? And that is really key, that whole word about balance. Some basic quick facts. There are 701 biospheres presently worldwide, and that's in 124 countries. There are 18 of them in Canada, and of course our biosphere designation was back in 2011. A typical biosphere, no matter where you go in the world, there's three parts to it, okay? And they're very simple. A core area, a buffer area, and a transition area. And a core area is basically, we have three objectives as a biosphere, or any biosphere around the world. And these three areas kind of look after that. So often you hear about conservation talked about for biospheres. Okay, we're going to protect species and so on. And that happens essentially in the core areas and the buffer areas as well. And the buffer area is not quite as strict. And in the transition areas where you find mostly the people, okay? And I'm probably thinking that most of you have been maybe to Moncton, the city of Moncton, and you've been to maybe Fundy National Park. Now, if you kind of think of the map of New Brunswick and put it Moncton and Fundy National Park, and put a big area around it, that's a biosphere as well. So you think, can a city be in a biosphere? Most definitely. And there are many throughout Canada that have cities in them. So we sometimes think it's someplace out in the country. We don't happen to have here in Cape Breton in our biosphere a large urban population. But a lot of the biospheres have large urban populations, and they would be in that transition area. So the other thing about a biosphere is that, as beautiful as it is, we don't have any kind of authority, okay? We're not a protected area. We're not a bureaucratic level. We're not a government. We're not national park, okay? We are really a body that helps to facilitate in an area for the three objectives, which I'll get to in just a moment, okay? And so they're learning places to learn how to live sustainably with nature so that we don't ruin where we are living. You know, we keep a good, clean house, I guess you say, but not necessarily spotless, but a nice, clean house. And so here are our objectives, and very simply they are conservation of species and resources in our ecosystem. 2, sustainable development using best practices, a sensible balanced approach. And finally, community capacity building, which is really just talking about the people in the community, the talents they have, and the resources of that community, okay? So in conservation, basically, this happens in the core and buffer areas. So again, you don't think of, I use the city of Moncton, which is in a biosphere. You don't think of Moncton being a conservation area. But yet, when they do their municipal planning or whatever, those things are in the back of their minds. You know, how do we handle this situation or that situation, okay? I want to get to the second objective, and that is sustainability. And so sustainability in a biosphere is basically the ability of the economy to support a defined level of economic production indefinitely. So not just the generation that you're living in, but the generations that will follow. And to do that, you want to make a decision in your sustainable development planning that your environment is protected or it's healthy, your society in which you live, your community is healthy, the culture of that community is a healthy one, and of course the economics of that community or the economy of that community is a healthy one as all. And this we consider to be the 4 pillars of any biosphere. It's using best practices in your community planning or municipal planning. And finally, our third objective is building community capacity. And as I said earlier, it's taking the people in your community, utilizing their talents, and taking your community resources and really building the strengths that you have in your community. And that's what we like to promote, okay? And we can promote that through research, through education, through monitoring. And we try to facilitate this through community organizations, but kind of joining forces with them and helping to develop communities that have diverse culture and diverse economies. And of course, that all goes to building a better community overall in your families, business, industry, conservation, tourism, that's a big one. That's something the biosphere is really trying to branch out and talk about sustainable development in this area, not anywhere around the biosphere, not just Richmond County, but completely all the way around. And we really want to work on that over the next couple of years and develop sustainable tourism. And the big thing about UNESCO is that it's an internationally recognized organization, and you have experts and you have a network of information, help, whatever, that you can utilize through that organization. So it's not that they are controlling in any way. It's basically you've got a resource that you can go to. Plus, you've got that label that you can utilize, especially if you were developing tourism plans for this area. You're in a UNESCO biosphere, and so that in itself, and of course Gordon here was very much involved with the road signage, and you've seen that, and so all of that is very beneficial. And basically, I think this just says here that what we are, we're just an organization we're all volunteers. It's a charitable organization. We promote best practices throughout the biosphere as best we can and like to work with other community groups to do that. And we maximize any educational resources we can get our hands on. Leverage national and international networking. So there are other biospheres in the country who have tried different things. They have good ideas that possibly we can utilize, or from other biospheres worldwide. It doesn't matter. There's a network out there that we can use. And we deliver related projects through our members. So we have different committees on our board, and we have a trail committee. The signage committee has done its work. We had a climate change adaptation forum last year. Recertification, because every 10 years, every biosphere has to go through this process where they give you a 43-page document, and Gordon's going to take it from here and tell you all about that. Not the document, but the...
Madam
So, Gordon,
Councillor.
could I ask you to, thank you.
There. Madam Morden, councillors, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for your time, and I'll be brief. We convinced UNESCO that this area here, the watershed of the Bidor Lake, deserves to be a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve because the people here try to live sustainably with nature. And one of the documents that we included in our initial submission was the Richmond County Integrated Community Sustainability Plan, which is eerily similar to the goals of sustainable development for a biosphere reserve. And all the municipalities, all 4 municipalities have these plans. And you also have the climate change adaptation plans that you're working through, so kudos to Richmond County. So regarding the misconception of biosphere reserves, the Fundy Biosphere Reserve in New Brunswick with Moncton in the center. Moncton is the fastest growing city in New Brunswick. The Manicouagan Biosphere Reserve in Quebec has an alcan smelter right in the middle of it in Baie-Comeau. You know, so don't be afraid about biosphere reserves stifling development. UNESCO gave this area the designation of a biosphere reserve because we were able to demonstrate to them that it's a good place. So I'd just like to give you quickly a little bit of background. 10 years ago, while we were doing massive community presentations to convince people that it would not stifle development. The original board was seeking broad community support, and Richmond County Council insisted that they should have a position on our board. So we modified our bylaws to allow that to happen, and we gave positions to all 4 municipal councils on our board. And shortly after that, Richmond County resigned from the board. So every time there's an election, we go back to the municipal counties and offer them the opportunity to be on our board.
It wouldn't have to be, I mean, I'm assuming everybody here has a day job and that they're doing this as community service, right? For the most part, I mean, that's usually how it works. And
Yes, it could be.
yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, so definitely.